to be sure to record this, and it's going to be available again on our website, because it usually is both in English and in Spanish. So welcome to everybody. Chris, do you want to go through?
Yeah, let's go through this just in case. So language interpretation is available for this meeting for those of you who are on the line. To access the language interpretation services, what you'll do is navigate to the globe in the meeting settings bar at the bottom of your screen, and you'll click on that and select the language that you prefer to listen to. For those of you who are monolingual English speakers, I would go ahead and go down to the interpretation menu and click English so that there is two-way exchange in the case that anyone who's in the Spanish language channel would like to interact or ask questions with the meeting. So what you'll do is just unmute yourself if you'd like to speak, and interpretation will be available. Carlos, or I'm sorry, excuse me, Francisco.
Thank you, Chris. Bienvenidos a todos. Como ustedes saben, todas estas reuniones son bilingües y todas las personas pueden participar en el idioma de su preferencia, ya sea inglés o español. Para accesar al canal, si pueden pulsar el globito de la interpretación y seleccionar el idioma de su preferencia. Si están haciéndolo desde un celular, el proceso es un poquito diferente, pero selecciona en vez del globito, busca los 3 puntitos de la elipse y de esa manera puede seleccionar el idioma de su preferencia y podrá escuchar. Eso le permite participar en el idioma que quiera y escuchar la interpretación de si otra persona está hablando en el idioma opuesto. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll add you into the interpretation channel and then back over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Francisco. We have 3 items that we want to speak with you tonight, get your input and provide information. The first one, as you see here, is going to be the Stewart Street storm improvements, and Lauren is going to walk us through an update on that. The second issue that will come up on our agenda is the West Colfax bike and ped safety. And Riley and Brett will be informing us on progress in those areas. And then finally, our third issue is seeking your input and feedback on how we can progress with these meetings and make sure that we have the right topics of interest for community members. So we're going to start out with Lauren on the Stewart Street storm improvements. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you. Again, I'm Lauren Winnan. I'm a project manager with Dottie in our wastewater capital projects group. And if you've been a part of the CAG before, you've heard me go through this Stewart Street project. But I wanted to come here tonight and give you another little update just because we've had a few little delays due to funding. So construction is still coming in 2023, but it'll be about mid-2023. So this project is along Stewart Street, just south of Sloan's Lake, between Colfax and Dry Gulch, and you can see it circled here in the red. Do you want to go to the next slide? So this is a stormwater driven project. What we will be doing is we'll be intercepting flows from an existing system in Colfax, and we'll be rerouting them to Dry Gulch via Stewart Street. So it'll help relieve some flooding on Colfax further to the east, and then it'll also collect some local flows along Stewart Street. You can see on this map, we've got some pedestrian crossing improvements on the south side of Colfax that'll be part of our project, and we'll work with the Colfax Ped and Transit project to make sure that our designs work together and that our storm project coordinates with theirs. And we'll be doing the curb ramps on the south side. They'll be doing the curb ramps on the north side. So Stewart Street itself, you won't notice a whole lot of difference other than like new inlets, so little entryways for the grates for the stormwater to go. And then it'll be all repaved. And there's a little segment just north of 13th where sidewalk's missing that will add it in. And then there'll be some water quality enhancements just south of Wells. Those will look like little swales, just like little grassy areas with some boulder drops, and then an outfall to Dry Gulch. Next slide. So this is a lot here, these plans, you don't have to know what's going on there, but what I was trying to do is show you what these curb ramps look like now on the south side of Colfax. Those will be updated to be directional. So there'll be one crossing Stewart and one crossing Colfax, and then the ped and transit project in Colfax will come in and have a median to make that crossing a little safer. Next slide. And then this is the south end of the project. This is at Stewart and Wells, and then Wells and Tennyson. We'll be adding curb and gutter on that south side. So just cleaning that up a little bit and just making some drainage improvements. And there'll be a new fence right there that'll look kind of similar to the old one, just updated. And then some of you might be familiar with the Tennyson bike project that's coming in the future. We have worked with them to make sure that what we're doing doesn't interfere with what they're doing. They'll be coming in after us with some signage about the bikeway, as well as some markings on the pavement. Next slide. Here's our schedule. So we're at the beginning of 2023. We're working on getting a contractor on board now. So we'll hopefully have that contractor on board this spring, if not summer. And then the work in the Gulch needs to be done during the drier season, so in the fall. So that'll come later. What we'll probably prioritize is the work in Colfax to get that done first, so that the Colfax Ped and Transit project can come in. So that work in Colfax will probably occur this summer to fall, and then the remainder of the project will follow, and it'll take about a year. Next slide. So what you'll see during construction, there will be a trail detour for that Dry Gulch Trail between Raleigh and Tennyson, and then we'll close one block at a time on Stewart Street. So you'll be rerouted along to other streets. Colfax will have lane closures. We won't be doing a full closure of Colfax, just one lane at a time. All work will be within the existing right-of-way, so nothing on private property, but some landscaping on Stewart Street is within the right-of-way, so that area next to the sidewalk could be impacted, but everything will be replaced back to how it was, and that also includes some driveway aprons, things like that. And then business access on Colfax will be maintained. Next slide. And then this is just contact info. My contact info is at the top left there. My phone number and email address is there if you need it. Please feel free to reach out with any questions.
Any questions, comments from Ann, Carlos, and S. Wright? Those are our community members. Any comments, questions for Lauren?
Yeah, I have a question. Is there anything that's going to be changing on the Colfax equipment as far as like pedestrian changes?
Not as part of my stormwater project. So this Stewart Street project is stormwater driven. And so when we come in and put the storm sewer system in, then because it's underground, then you end up having to redo the road and the curb ramps and things like that. So that's all just because we're adding in the storm sewer. So we're not extending beyond Stewart Street and Colfax as part of our stormwater project. The Colfax Ped and Transit may have something in that reach, but
yeah, the great question. So the just to jump in, the West Colfax project that we're about to talk about next is going to be making some changes at Colfax Equipment. And so we'll give you an update on those in just a few minutes.
Thank you, Riley.
Thank you, Riley. Okay, I don't think we have any other questions. So thank you, Lauren. We really appreciate the information. And we're going to move into bike and pedestrian safety West Colfax. There's a lot of information that we're going to share with you tonight, or Riley and Brett are. I would encourage you to, if you have questions in their presentation, to either raise your hand, and I think I have a pretty good view of who's in the room. And then also, if you want to just ask questions or make statements in the chat, I'm monitoring the chat as well. So please feel free to use either of those. And anytime you'd like us to pause, just give me a note in the chat, and I'll be glad to do that. So Riley, do you want to take it away?
Sounds good. So thanks again, everyone, for having me tonight. My name is Riley Lemie with Dottie, and I'm here to give an update on the West Colfax Pedestrian and Transit Project. This project has been underway for quite some time right now, so we're excited to give an update on the construction timeline and want to share a little bit of information about what's going to occur as a part of that project. So if you can go on to the next slide. So some of the safety improvements that are coming to West Colfax, or that will be under construction shortly, are designed to improve overall safety on Colfax by reducing speeds, by reducing conflicts between pedestrians and turning vehicles, also making improvements that will shorten the distance that pedestrians have to cross. And then one important one is also improving the visibility of pedestrians and bicyclists crossing the street. And then finally, we're also going to be making some improvements to transit along the corridor as well. This is one of the most heavily used transit corridors in Denver. And so making it more comfortable to wait and access transit, as well as making transit more reliable. So I will go through through tonight's presentation, go through some details about what those improvements will look like and kind of what you can expect. This project is funded through construction through the Elevate Denver Bond Program, as well as a Safer Main Streets grant that we got through CDOT. So we will be, the project is fully designed, and we will be beginning or sending the project out to bid for construction soon. But just to go on to the next slide, a little bit of background on timing of this. So we began planning to make improvements, permanent improvements to West Colfax back in 2019. So we had a series of community meetings to talk about what the improvements should look like, and kind of allow the public to weigh in on those specific improvements. And then during the years of 2021 through last year, 2022, the project moved into what's called the engineering phase, where a lot of work went into actually designing the project. And then that leads us to where we're at now. So we are ready to go to construction very soon. I think I was told that we expect the project to go out to bid sometime in March. Usually it takes a couple of months in between the time when a project goes out to bid for a contractor to construct it and when the project actually gets constructed. So we currently are anticipating that these improvements that the construction of these improvements will start this fall. But excited that we're to this point in the project. Again, this has been underway for quite some time, so we're looking forward to getting these improvements in the ground. So just to provide a little bit of context, the project that I'm talking about is actually improvements between Sheridan all the way to Irving Street. So when I say West Colfax, improvements will be made at intersections all along that stretch of the corridor. I wanted to talk really quickly about some improvements that were recently made back in 2020. So back in 2020, based on some crashes that Dottie was seeing, we made some improvements to improve safety in the near term, knowing that this longer term, more permanent project was coming. And so some of the things that were done was adjusting the signal timing to reduce speeds. And basically how that works is that the signal timing was adjusted so that if a vehicle is going quicker or is excessively speeding, they will hit a red light. And so that is kind of one tool that we've used to be able to slow down speeds. And then another thing that has been done was changing what we call a leading pedestrian interval. We installed those at several intersections between Sheridan and Lowell. Basically what that does though is it gives a pedestrian a head start to cross the street while the light or the traffic light remains red. So again, that gives a pedestrian kind of a protected way to be able to cross the street before the rest of the traffic is getting a green light to be able to proceed through an intersection. And then a next thing that we also did was install driver feedback signs at 4 locations. And so those are the signs that indicate to drivers how fast they're going, and then also reduce the speed on West Colfax down to 30 miles an hour. So the slide that I have up or on the screen here just shows some of the locations where the leading pedestrian intervals were installed at. So I won't list all those off, but those were about on 5 locations on Colfax. And then an additional longer pedestrian phase was installed at Colfax and Irving. And that is what's called an all pedestrian phase, which means that the lights stay red for everyone. And then it gives pedestrians the ability to cross the street while the lights continue to stay red. It's similar to what is in downtown, where the lights stay red for everyone at the intersection, and then pedestrians have the right of way to cross the street.
Riley, can you tell us what LPI means?
Yeah, so as a reminder, it's a leading pedestrian interval, and it gives pedestrians a head start. So the walk signal or the crossing signal will stay lit for pedestrians while the traffic light stays red.
Thank you.
And we have seen some overall safety improvements as a result of installing the leading pedestrian intervals and changing the signal timing. So we noticed we have data that goes back quite a ways, but looking between 2016 and 2015, you can see that there's quite a few fatal crashes, unfortunately, and serious crashes that resulted in a serious injury that happened during that during that 5-year time frame. And then fortunately, ever since implementing those changes between 2020 and 2023, over the last 2 years, we have not seen any fatal crashes that have happened on West Colfax. We have unfortunately still seen some serious injury crashes, and that is what the more permanent improvement that I'm going to talk about in just a minute will help to address, is reducing those crashes. So if you can go on to the next slide, I want to go into some more details about what's included. So what Dottie will be constructing are pedestrian bulb outs at 17 intersections. Quitman will be one of the locations where we're installing a pedestrian bulb out. And I'll in just a few minutes explain a little bit about what a pedestrian bulb out is and what that looks like and how that helps to improve safety. But in addition to that, we'll also be installing about 8 new landscaped median islands. So right now, if you are driving or walking down West Colfax, there's 2 lanes on either side, plus a parking lane, as well as that middle lane. So that middle lane will go away for the most part in a lot of locations, and instead provide a landscaped median. We're also planning to keep the medians open at Vrain and Lowell Street, so that way we can accommodate signals in the future and be able to add new controlled places to be able to cross the street. And then we will also be adding what's called a bus bulb out. So it's an expanded waiting area to wait for folks to wait while that are taking transit. And then to increase the speed and reliability of transit, we'll also be installing special signals that allow buses to be able to communicate with the traffic lights, and that gives them priority when they're or gives a bus a priority that is on Colfax when they're trying to get to their next transit stop. And then in a few places between Julian and Irving on the south side of the street, and then between Sheridan and Zenobia on the south side of the street, we'll be widening, we'll be widening the sidewalk a little bit at those locations. So on the next up, so one of the things this map is just to kind of highlight as an example of when we're analyzing at Dottie where crashes have happened and how we can help to reduce or prevent crashes in the future. We do take a look at the actions that were leading up to the crash and whether or not that crash resulted in a fatality or in a serious bodily injury. We also look at who it was involving, so whether it was involving two vehicles or a bicycle in a vehicle or a pedestrian in a vehicle. And all of this kind of helps to determine appropriate, when we see crashes like what we've seen, helps to determine what we call countermeasures, and those are design treatments that will help with reducing the number of crashes and improving overall safety in the future. So on the next slide.
Can we just pause a little bit there before we go into bulb outs and medians, Riley, to be sure that any of our participants ask if there's any questions. Anna and Carlos and Shane, any questions, comments? No. Okay.
So just wanted to share a little bit of information about what pedestrian bulb outs do and landscape medians. So a pedestrian bulb out is kind of like an extension of the sidewalk. What it's designed to do is to slow down the speed of a turning vehicle. So sometimes we see crashes that result from that slide that I just showed you before. These are bulb outs, and the medians are designed to counteract those type of crashes. So these both expand the sidewalk at intersections so that it's less distance that a pedestrian has to cross when going across the street. And they also increase visibility for people crossing the street. But again, finally, sometimes again, we see conflicts between someone crossing and then a turning vehicle. So not only does this provide more visibility, but it's also slowing down the speed that a car takes a corner. And so then again, reducing the likelihood that a crash would result in a serious injury. And then on this landscape medians are kind of working to accomplish similar things. One of the benefits of the medians is that they narrow the roadway. So typically what we'll see is when a street is really wide and there's no obstacles, it can oftentimes encourage vehicles to go faster. It feels like psychologically like you can drive faster. And by narrowing the roadway with landscaping and with the medians, we oftentimes see speeds that are slower. And so this is a tool to be able to discourage speeding and slow down vehicles. What it also does is it provides additional safe places to cross. And you'll notice that the median is left open, so that way a pedestrian can safely cross the street there. And then finally, because traffic will not be able to make left turns in some of the locations where the median is essentially blocking access, that actually eliminates quite a few conflicts. Sometimes we will see crashes where someone is crossing the street and a vehicle making a left turn. We'll see a conflict point there, and having the median there is essentially eliminating that conflict point. And so there won't be medians at every location, at least not where there is, at least not where there's a stoplight, because we still will be allowing those traffic movements. However, there will be a median installed that goes across equipment, as well as again that bulb out that goes there, and then medians that will be installed in 8 other locations along the corridor. And then again, I touched on this a little bit earlier, but just wanted to touch base one more time on the transit component of this. So bus bulb outs are very similar to the pedestrian bulb outs that I just described. They help to slow down turning vehicles, and they increase visibility, but they also provide a more comfortable space to wait for transit. So you can kind of think of it again as an extension of the sidewalk. And then some other improvements that are coming are just the consolidation of the number of stops. What that does is it makes it so that a transit bus doesn't have to stop at every single stop along the corridor. And that again helps to reduce delay. And then special signals will allow transit to communicate with our traffic signals, so that way they get the right of way through an intersection. So say the light is about to turn red, they can communicate with the signal, and that gives them a few extra seconds to get across. And so that also is something that can help the overall reliability of transit. And as I mentioned before, there's a lot of transit users that use West Colfax. So just on, I think on the next slide, I'm going to hand it over to Brett, and he can give you an update on something that was called the NTMP, or the Neighborhood Transportation Management Program. But before we do that, happy to pause there in case there's any questions, again, about the more permanent improvements that are planned for construction for West Colfax.
Carlos, Shane, Anna or Ann, any questions, comments? Feel free to use the chat as well.
No
Carlos?
questions at the time. No questions.
Yes, Carlos.
No, no questions here either. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, just want to be sure. Okay, Brett?
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. Again, my name is Brett Boncory. I'm in the Transportation Engineering Design group of DOTI, and I manage like Riley said, the Neighborhood Transportation Management Program. And I'm just here to give a brief update on some mobility and safety projects that we've been designing in the West Colfax and Villa Park area. So some of you may have been involved in our NTMP action plan process, which really ended in 2021. This process engaged over 100 of your neighbors, multiple phases of public outreach, and we had over 900 location-based comments that we sifted through, came up with some project recommendations, then had a second phase where your neighbors helped us prioritize which projects were most important to them, and those are the ones that we ended up pushing forward. And so just kind of to give an update on that, since that action plan, basically that whole process resulted in 66 total projects in the West Colfax and Villa Park neighborhoods. You can see it kind of outlined in this map on the right, if you're not familiar with those. And I'm going to just to give a brief overview of these projects, but if you really want to take a deep dive into these projects, you can go on our NTMP website, just type in West Colfax NTMP and it'll pop up. Yeah, so of these 66 projects, we had 53 what we call operational and safety projects. These are kind of smaller in nature, and these were kind of new stop signs, new crosswalks, new stop bars, daylighting at intersections, which means pulling back the parking at the intersection so that visibility is better for all users at that intersection. We even had some leading pedestrian intervals, LPIs, that Riley talked about earlier. We had a few of those in that batch of projects along Sheridan and other locations. And those, we're happy to report, we're about 3/4 of the way through those 53 projects. And so happy to say we've gotten most of those done, and we continue to work on those, and we'll have those done by the summer, all of those done by the summer of this year. And then there was this other bucket of projects, what we call NTMP projects. And really these were neighborhood scale traffic calming projects, usually at locations where there was a high need for better pedestrian crossing enhancements, or we saw high speeding in the area. And again, we had more needs than this in the area, but we had limited resources. So really asked your neighbors to help us prioritize which projects made the most sense. And these 6 projects really rose to the top. First one is a walkway improvement at 6th and Perry. So really it's the Perry Street over the 6th Avenue Viaduct, if you can think of that location. Really adding a walkway on the left side of that, and another stop sign there to clarify traffic and allow safer pedestrian movements. And then at 10th and Perry, it's kind of an offset intersection if you're familiar, kind of not aligned on Perry. And so we're doing some curb extensions and some pedestrian enhancements, actually adding a transit pad, just like Riley described on Colfax Avenue. And then at 10th and Lakewood Gulch, we're adding a crosswalk and a pedestrian refuge island. At 10th Ave and Mead, we're doing a traffic calming project to add bulb outs, which basically encourage slower vehicle turning speeds. At Perry and Lakewood Gulch here, we're adding an RRFB. I should have spelled that out. I'm sorry. What that stands for is a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. So at the Lakewood Gulch Trail, right where it crosses Perry, we will have a marked crosswalk with those flashing beacons to warn vehicles that there's a pedestrian that's trying to cross, to promote safer crossings there. And then kind of same thing at 12th Avenue and Knox Street, where we're adding a rectangular rapid flashing beacon with a refuge island, so that the intersection's a little tighter, that turning speeds can be decreased, and that pedestrians can even do a 2-stage crossing if they'd like to, along with the RRFB there. That will be able to help them facilitate their crossing. So, and then in addition to that, we had 7 other future projects that are not funded, and we don't have necessarily a timeline for those, but we are actively pursuing funding in future CIP years for that. So all that to say, those NTMP projects will be constructed in 2023, and we'll continue to update this group on that as we proceed forward on that construction. So that's all I had. Go to the next slide. Yeah.
Questions, comments?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, Shane says that these are all sound great. Is there any other work being done on Sheridan? There are troubles there. Is there any evidence that built environment projects can help with the crime?
That I can try to take that one, Catherine.
Okay, Brad.
There are other Sheridan projects. I believe even there is a sidewalk project that maybe we can get back to you on the status of that one. But as far as, I think the second part of the question was, is there evidence that, can you maybe say that second part, Catherine?
Is there evidence that built environment projects can help with crime?
Got it. Definitely varying evidence. Riley can maybe chime in here too, but certainly when we increase lighting on a corridor, that can certainly help with crime from that kind of safety and security standpoint. Sometimes streetscape projects can help with that as well, and kind of that the perception of like that investment can sometimes help minorly, but I wouldn't say the correlation is super strong on that. But Riley, I don't know if you had anything to add to that.
Yeah, certainly not an expert in this area, but I think there is data that shows generally like streetscape improvements, green infrastructure, such as trees, planting, that kind of thing, are correlated with lower crime, and then things like street lighting. So I think, again, I don't personally have a lot of direct data of that, but just kind of going off of previous studies and things that I've heard. So,
Shane, does that answer your question? Okay, great. Thanks, Shane. Not seeing any more questions or comments. We can move to the next section, and here's where we actually, is this?
yeah, so I just put this on here as a quick slide. I know there were some questions about bike infrastructure, so really just quickly wanted to mention there's been some questions about when are bike improvements coming to the West Colfax area. So the map that's on the right kind of shows what is planned, or I should say what is proposed. And the city is currently working to secure funding to be able to start planning and designing and constructing bikeway improvements for the west area of the city. And this is our the west area is a priority for us. And what that means is that we want to go into the start part of the city next and be able to start planning bikeway improvements. And typically what that process looks like is that we will work with the community to identify are the streets that we're planning on these improvements, are these the right locations, are these the right streets? And then next, once that's done, we will develop what we call a concept design. So again, work through a public process to identify the right type of bikeway improvements, and then finally those get designed and constructed. So this area has been prioritized for funding, where we want to essentially intend to start that, assuming that we're successful in getting funding for that next year. On the map on the left, there is some other projects that some of you may have heard called the West Denver Safer Streets. And it's a little bit hard to see, but it's the ones that are highlighted. So Perry, and then I think Irving and Bates. Those are projects that have already been designed and have gone through a public process. I think there might have been one on Tennyson as well, but those are projects that have gone through the public process, and we are working to identify funding for those. Unfortunately, we wanted to start construction on those this year, and the cost of inflation has forced us to scale back a little bit about what we wanted to construct for some of these improvements. But those are additional bikeway projects that are planned for construction in addition to the ones that I showed that are on the map to the right. So anyway, just wanted to take a quick moment to acknowledge that there are bikeway improvements that are coming in, that this is a priority for us to begin additional bikeway projects in this part of the city.
Thank you, Randy. Comments or questions? Okay.
What are those bikeway improvements going to look like? Are they going to be something like the like what you have around like the Sloan's Lake area?
It depends. So it could be a range of improvements. For the West Denver Safer Streets, I think most of those projects, some of them are maybe a protected bike lane. Some of them may be what we call a neighborhood bikeway. And what that means is it's improvements that are made on residential streets, that are designed to slow down traffic. But really those improvements are usually made primarily at the intersection. So for the projects that haven't been designed yet, it could be a range. So it could be just a bike lane, it could be a protected bike lane, or it could be a neighborhood bikeway, which is again improvements that are made at intersections to slow down traffic and make it easier to cross. If some of the exact improvements haven't been identified yet, and that's what we'll be working with the community on to kind of determine what those ultimately look like.
Anything else? Okay, thanks, Riley. Thanks, Brett. So Anne and Anna and Carlos and Shane, we'd like, with your permission, to have a little focus group with you, because we're planning our 23 West area community engagement. And we'd like to be sure that we're reaching out on the issues and topics that are most important to you. And if we could spend a few minutes with you as a small focus group to respond to some questions that we have, so that we can better inform and seek input from the community. If you don't mind, Chris is going to lead us through that, and feel free to use the chat or just turn on your mic.
Thank you so much, Catherine. And as a reminder, I just wanted to introduce myself one more time and kind of explain my role and the purpose of the community engagement that's happening in the West area. And then I'd really love to again, with your permission, if you feel comfortable, get introductions from you all residents and folks who are on the call, just to better understand you, and then we can kind of jump into some questions as time allows. So my name is Chris Callanan, and I work for the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, along with my colleagues who have been on the call this evening. And I work specifically in an office called Community and Business Engagement. And we really recognize and acknowledge that infrastructure impacts communities quite a bit, and especially when there's clusters of infrastructure projects that are either pending or upcoming or being implemented, that it's important to communicate and keep the community informed and to collect feedback in areas where we can collect feedback. So that's really the role of my role and my office. I just started in this position here about 3 months ago, and we've been doing our 2023 kind of strategic planning for community engagement in this West area, like Catherine mentioned. And we thought that it would be a really good time to just kind of touch base with you all on what kind of engagement that you all would find helpful, what information, what project updates, that sort of thing. So, and as a reminder, for those of you who haven't necessarily been involved intimately or new, this specific engagement type is called a community advisory group, or CAG. And we use CAGs as just an important communication and collaboration tool with you all, residents and organizations, about projects and programs that are either planned or being implemented. And we want to convene a really diverse group of stakeholders so that we can get perspectives and insight and feedback from everyone who would like to engage. And that's the existing model that we're using. And just as we're looking forward to 2023, we're just looking to kind of just get input on topics that you'd like to hear about, your preferred method of engagement or getting that information, etc. So with that, I'd love if any of you, Carlos, Anna, or Esright, if you'd like to kind of hop on and introduce yourself, and kind of what brought you here and why you're engaged, that would be really valuable.
Sure, I'd be happy to do so. My name's Anna Mercurio, and I am with the Urban Land Conservancy. We're an affordable housing developer. We also rent at below market rate to mission-minded commercial space. We're a nonprofit. And so not only do we have some property in this area, but I actually also live in this area. So this has been a really helpful place to gather information. And usually I think that's kind of how I use this tool, as more of a learning opportunity, see what's going on, and how it might be impacting some of our projects, and how we can provide input to help you all in your direction. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna.
Sherry, I'm just wondering if we can go off the screen, off the slide deck, because we don't have any others.
Yeah.
And then that way we can all see each other. There you go.
Thank you.
My name's Shane. I live at 1400 Raleigh, and I'm a dad and husband and West Colfax enthusiast. I work in the nonprofit world as a nonprofit executive, and am thrilled to be part of the conversation.
Thank you,
Thanks, Shane.
Shane. Carlos?
I'm Carlos. I've been working here with at Denver Metro Village, and we're also nonprofit. I'm currently the safety coordinator here, 18-story building, and we're closely involved with Catherine from the CAG meetings and safe neighborhood watch. But yeah, we're just trying to get involved and trying to see what we can do to make more improvements in our neighborhood and with the current issues that we have, and maybe seeing if there's any other ideas and things that are going on outside of our area that may be relative to what ours are, and maybe we can kind of pick off some of those ideas.
Thank you, Carlos. And I love your lowrider background.
Thank you. Representing for District 3. My name is Ayan, and I work for Council President Jamie Torres. And I've been with her office since 2021. But now Katie Heidemann has left our office, so I'm covering West Colfax and Villa Park for the office.
Thank you for correcting my pronunciation. Thanks, Ayan.
Oh, no worries. I answered anything, but it's like Ryan without the R. So Ayan Ryan.
Thanks, Ian.
Okay, Chris.
Well, great. It's really good to understand where your all's backgrounds are and kind of why you've decided to come. One of my first questions is this format of meeting, the CAG, is really helpful because not only can we interact with folks and in the neighborhood and region live, if people can attend, but we can also, and that's what's happening tonight, record the meetings and post them to the community advisory group's website so that anyone who has interest or would like to find out more information would be able to access that whenever they would like to. And I'd like to kind of understand if you all have any opinions about kind of how you'd like to access that information or how you'd like to engage. Is this meeting format and kind of the website format sufficient at this point? Do you feel comfortable with that, or are there other ways that you receive information about other topics that you think might be helpful?
Anna, you want to start? Do you have a comment? I don't want to put you on the spot. Does anybody have a comment?
No, I found this to be a pretty effective method. I like the kind of blend of a presentation and then an opportunity to have a conversation. Even though I know I haven't been very vocal, it's been, I think it works. I think at least for me.
That's a really helpful perspective to hear, that even kind of maybe passively that the information sharing is really appreciated.
I have a little bit to add. I feel that if that everything that you guys did today was good, moving forward, I think that it would be great. If there was maybe like a simulation or something that you guys could do with all these improvements to kind of like show how these improvements are going to work and how traffic and pedestrians are going to be crossing and how just kind of how everything's moving. If maybe you can have some kind of presentation for that, like as far as like a simulation of how it's going to change versus how it's working now.
That's
I
a
think
really,
that would be great.
yeah, that's a really good idea. And I'm not sure that we've ever thought of presenting information that way. So I will definitely take that and take a note.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Shane?
I don't know if you guys go door to door much, but that seems to have been an effective way to outreach for some of the work I was into in the past. And I really like Urban Land Conservancy and Councilwoman Torres's office, especially with that's Old West Colfax right there with the Chicano Arts Collective there, the Latino Arts and Cultural, or so whatever they call it. Freddie and David Osalatol and them. I like this format for sure. It's hard to go to meetings all the time for me. I get a little, I think if you guys struggle with engagement, a long time ago, we started the West Colfax Association of Neighbors, and it's just hard to get people to engage sometimes was my experience. And I am now one of those people who it seems is harder to engage.
We're glad you're here tonight.
Yeah, very glad.
Yeah, thanks. I missed the one on the river, which I really wanted to attend, but thanks for keeping it going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any comments, Ian?
I was just wondering, have y'all gone to RNO meetings and presented? Is that
We have not, from my understanding, or at least while I've been here and kind of supporting the CAG model, which has only been about half a year, I don't believe we've done direct outreach to RNOs yet, but I will be reaching out to RNOs here in the near future to make an introduction and just kind of establish that relationship, because I know that they're an important voice in space for organizing.
yeah,
I'd
and
add to that is that we actually have reached out to RNOs, but prior to time that Chris was there, and really engaged, mostly from not quite to Alameda, but that we did try to reach as many as we can, but to Chris's point, really wanting to do that again. And then the projects that like Riley and Brett and Lauren talk about, there is a strong outreach into with the registered neighborhood organizations as well as other community groups on those specific projects. The CAG tries to bring all that information together specifically, but I know Riley, Brett, and Lauren spend a lot of time in community trying to get as much input. As you can see, these projects are long in sort of planning, and when as Riley was saying, finally we're to construction, it's an exciting moment for all of us. But I do want to assure you that they use that RNO organizational structure to reach into community. Riley, Brett, or Lauren, I don't know if you want to add to that, but I want to sort of cheer you on in that. I know in that effort.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. And yeah, just to echo that, we oftentimes do outreach for individual projects to RNOs. And then, or sometimes for individual projects, we'll also do community meetings that are specifically about those projects. And this is sort of like I think the CAG is sort of like a one-stop shop to be able to get information. But yeah, I think you are spot on, Catherine.
Yeah, ditto. Yep.
All right, thanks.
I'd say that something that would help us from my family's experiences is, and I think it's a matter of the paces, but it's how to enforce the pedestrian walkways and bike walkways and transportation corridors during construction. I know my mother-in-law lived in our basement for 2 years, and then she moved 1 block away to where Carlos is at Metro Manor. And that was the best block in all of Denver. But then for the construction that Metro Manor was having, the traffic corridor and the pedestrian corridor was really difficult for a long while. And that wasn't just with Metro Manor, it was also with the health center directly adjacent to it on the north side of Colfax. And then now we've got construction on the south side of Colfax for the old car lot. And it's really problematic for visuals if you're trying to turn out of the alley, or if the kids are trying to, it's just, I don't know how Department of Transportation and Infrastructure handles right-of-way when construction projects are actively happening, but that would be helpful for, because I think in the planning process, nobody really wants to come to these meetings, but then when it's happening and it's affecting the way you move around your neighborhood, it starts to make more of a difference.
Right, yeah. No, that's helpful, especially as we bring this information back to the team and kind of think about what information is helpful for community to have and in which spaces to give feedback in. And it does get kind of tricky with those private developments happening alongside infrastructure that is important. So, okay, great. I know we only have a few more minutes, but I did want to just poll the group if there's any other ideas about specific topics that are helpful to hear about or information. And then as we're looking to kind of do our strategy around engagement, if there's people who haven't been engaged or organizations that haven't been engaged that you'd like to like maybe see or for me to reach out to, if you have any feedback there, that would be really helpful.
think you're probably already engaging in the Southwest Denver Coalition. Because I know Dottie has done presentations for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think the CAG, this CAG it doesn't engulf that Southwest area, but in fact, Chris is already thinking about how we do that as well.
Yeah, they have a lot of partners all over the city as well. So it might be good to see if to reach out, even if it's not specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
great.
And then just the safety thing kind of piqued my interest because I know DPD, Denver Police, are doing a lot of CEPTEDs, which is like community environmental safety plan, I forget the acronym exactly. But they do also some community engagement around that. So
Interesting.
I'm not sure if the two agencies kind of overlap, but it's they did one in Barnum Park, and we were able to work with Parks and Rec on some environmental designs there. So that just kind of spurred my, I don't know, thought
Yeah.
process in terms of if there could be overlap there, because DPD could do a CEPTED for Dottie if there was areas that community were concerned about crime.
Yeah, that's really helpful. You all have such a holistic view of city services and what you're hearing from constituents. So that's really
It's a
helpful.
lot.
Anything else that anyone wants to pitch in now? And of course, if you have ideas or suggestions after the CAG, you can feel free to reach out to me directly. And I'm also happy to grab coffee or hop on a meeting with folks if things come up. No.
Well, I really want to thank you for letting us pick your brains this last few minutes, and it's really helpful to us because we're trying constantly to seek ways to increase our engagement with the community, and really appreciate your being with us tonight. It means a lot to us. So I'll just say good night. Have a good weekend.
Have a good
Thank
evening,
you.
everyone.
Take
See you
care.
next
Quick
month.
question.
Oh, yeah.
Where can we access the recorded video for this so I can maybe possibly give it to my manager so that they can view?
Yeah, I was going to directly send that to you all. The CAG gets an update, or excuse me, a follow-up email with that recording. And then I was going to reach out to you all at Metro to get that directly to you as well.
Oh, okay. Sounds
Yeah.
great.
So you'll
Thank
see
you.
it here in the next few days.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye,
Good night.
everyone.
Bye.